Greetings all, and welcome to Dave's Craft Room. I'm Dave, and on today's video, I have here my Keytar block, and we're gonna make a Keytar quilt on this day. I designed this block myself, and this was the one I made for an experiment. The way I designed this block, which I did film already, but all I did was I drew it on some, like a big piece of scratch paper. It's the kind of paper people use to like scrunch it up and put it in their vase when they move. But I just drew it on there, and I drew it, and I kind of figured out how I wanted the pieces to kind of go. And then I cut out those pieces, here they are, you know, and there's like background, and this is packing paper. I originally intended to make templates, but now I'm kind of like, I'll just use the paper. I mean, you would definitely want to use like thick cardboard, or not corrugated cardboard because that's too thick, but like thick cardstock. But I don't feel like doing all that. I think I can make this work. And one part of this idea is really, when I made the Mod TV quilt, they invented this, well, I don't know if they invented it, but the technique is in the pattern where you kind of just sew the pieces together and then cut them, and they don't have to be exact. And that's what I like. And your block will end up a little bit bigger and kind of a little bit wibbly wobbly, and then you just trim it to 15 inches. So each one will be ever so slightly different because I don't have to focus on making them perfect. And this keyboard right here is fully pieced. Well, the black keys and the white keys at the top are pieced, and then this is pieced here with just like that. And the tea about that is, I mean, you can definitely find keyboard fabric online, but I don't have any, and I want to make this today. But also, like, where's the fun in that? You know what I mean? I want to piece it. So, but that's a lot to piece, and these are tiny pieces to cut. So obviously the hack is we strip piece. Okay, this was 3/4 of an inch, so that each actual key, black key, is 1/4 of an inch. If I make a big long one, I can cut it, and that's how I can make 15 of them. I plan to make 15 of these. So that's the Keytar block, and then I plan to alternate those with these. These are t-shirts, and these are Keytar themed t-shirts from the internet, from eBay or wherever, I don't even know where all. And there's, I think, 11, 1, 2, 3, 10. I thought there was 11. Oh, I'm wearing one. I think I bought them, and I don't think I wanted to cut this one up. I think I wanted to wear this one. So I'm not gonna cut this one up, I'm gonna keep wearing it. But this is Keytar fabric too. So the rest, whatever's not in t-shirt is gonna be in Keytar fabric. This is from Etsy, and it is stunning. I mean, sorry, this is from Spoonflower. Sparklezilla, designed by Sparklezilla. And it's the Keytar fabric, it's stunning. I mean, this looks just exactly like my actual Keytar that I have, which, where is it? This is my Keytar Yamaha SHS-10 digital keyboard with MIDI. I like this keyboard, this Keytar, because you can lay down some chords and then play a melody over the chords that will repeat. We are serving Doogie Howser theme song today. Sorry, I got distracted playing the Keytar. Let me do this first. Let me cut these out. Interface the t-shirts, cut this out. I'm thinking 30 blocks, because 15 Keytars, 15 of these, 5 by 6. And the quilt will be about 75 inches by 90. I did not subtract the seam allowance, so it'll be like slightly less than that, but whatever. Oh, if I can't get a 15-inch block out of these, I will just finagle it. And so I will get a 15-inch block in the end, because I will have finagled it. So this is how I designed the block. I pretty much just used my rulers to draw a keytar, and I'm just making sure that all the lines are actually straight, just like a seam needs to be straight. And then I use this X-Acto knife to cut out all the pieces, and I labeled the pieces so I could keep track of what's the background and what's the keytar. So the next step is piecing this strip unit for the keyboard keys, and the biggest pitfall in doing a strip unit like this is that when you piece all these little strips together, which these are 3/4 of an inch wide, they have a tendency to get warped. There's a lot of tips out there for how to help you avoid making it warped. In all honesty, I don't find that a lot of them really work for me. It still kind of gets a little bit warped. Maybe a little bit of warping is just inevitable. Some things that help for me is that I iron the seams open. That seems to work better than ironing them to one side. I also piece 2 together at a time, and then I piece those into units of 4 and then into units of 8 and so on. I find that works better than adding a strip on to a unit one at a time and making the unit bigger and bigger. But either way, I mean, it still gets a little warped. It's just inevitable. But also I'm cutting it to 1.5 inch pieces. And so in pieces this thin, you're really not even going to notice. I started cutting in the middle because I felt that I wanted to get the middle chunk, because that was the straightest chunk, whereas the edges were really what's warped. They're all going to get trimmed anyway, so it's okay if they got a little bit warped. So that's the part for the black keys, and then for the actual white keys, there was no point in piecing it because it's just white. I pretty much just cut these out and sewed them on and then trimmed them to size. Alright, so in this scene, I am making my test block. This is the first one I made. This one I am making a little more accurate by actually measuring 1/4 inch on either side of the template pieces. Kind of. I don't even really do it completely accurate the whole time either. It doesn't have to be accurate. And then I pretty much just cut all the pieces out and then sew them together. That's honestly all there is to it. And you can see here that it doesn't have to be exact. It can be bigger because I'm going to trim it down later. So that's why it's just a triangle on the edge. I didn't have to cut it to the exact size. And these pieces for the background, as long as they're bigger than what I need, I can always trim them down. And so now you'll see that I piece these in this order. So there's that strip, and then we have the neck, and then you can see here I'm just trimming it to make it square and straight. And then with it like so squared up and straight, I can now sew that together, sew the corner piece on, and then sew the huge triangles onto the side of it. And then this is what I meant by it yields this like wonky kind of mess, and then all you have to do is trim it. Now that I have my test block done, and I love it. I am going to, I can probably like cut all the pieces out at once and chain piece them. Start chain piecing. Good, that's stunning. Let's get the Cheez-It blocks. No, lava lamps. No, Keytar. Let's get the Keytar blocks cut and put together. At this point, I'm ready to cut out all the pieces and start the chain piecing process. And so I pretty much just laid down 4 or 5 fat quarters of solids, and I realized that I could get a whole keytar and a background out of each fat quarter. So that's what I'm doing. As long as there's more than a 1/4 inch of leeway on the edge of the pieces, it's fine. They don't have to be exact. So I'm cutting out the pieces and setting them to the side off the camera. And I just did this pretty much until I had enough for 15. So here's all the pieces for the keytar itself, and then I pieced this chunk of it first. What I'm doing now is those little pieces of colored fabric there are going to be like the cutout corner of that keytar neck, and so I'm just auditioning them to see what looks good, because whatever piece I select for that cutout part, that's going to be the background color. So this is kind of how I audition them. You see I get to the end and I don't want yellow with the orange, so I just switch it out with a different one. And now I'm cutting off this bulk here, and then I'm going to iron that piece out and trim it to a 90-degree angle. That will blend in with the background and it'll just look like a cutout. So now that I have the backgrounds already kind of assigned with that cutout piece, I now need to arrange all the other pieces in that order to make it easier to chain piece. Here you can kind of see why I said that none of the piecing had to be perfect, because we're just going to sew it on and then trim it straight. So as long as we trim it straight so that it fits, then when we sew it together it'll fit and it'll lay flat. And you'll see later how I trim the wonky blocks. If you're new to my channel, welcome to Dave's Craft Room. I put out new quilting videos every other Tuesday. I didn't really make tutorials per se, I kind of just show you how I'm doing it, and then I do like a lot of time lapses. So if you like my style of video, then please like the video and subscribe to my channel. And then here you can see that I did sew the giant background pieces on, and these are now those wonky blocks that I was talking about, and they'll get trimmed all down to 15 inches. So as I arranged them on the design wall, I kind of realized that they should actually go sort of in the orientation that it would be like as if you were playing it. Although I didn't put them up that way initially, I ultimately realized that that's the way they should go, and then I finally changed it. I just changed some blocks around to make it look more beautiful and lovely. That's kind of why we have a design wall, because you can kind of step back and see which blocks look better where. The design wall is cotton batting, spray adhesive onto 1-inch pieces of styrofoam from Lowe's, and those are fastened onto my wall with those like Velcro command strips. Alright, this quilt top is done. This is the batting. This is 80/20. And then this is going to be the backing. I feel like sometimes with a very colorful quilt top, you can use a chill, vibey backing. So that's what I have here with this gray plaid flannel. And then I decided to do the inside out method, where we're gonna put the backing and top face together, right sides together, and then sew around it and then turn it inside out. And I'm gonna do a little bit of hand quilting, a little bit of machine quilting, and see what happens. Let's get into it. So now I'm doing the big stitch embroidery floss quilting. This batting that I chose requires quilting every 4 inches. So I did the big stitch embroidery floss quilting, and then I also did some machine quilting around the Keytars. And then I also did the straight line diagonal across those t-shirt blocks and fabric blocks. And then I also did some smaller stitch hand quilting in between that. So there's pretty much multiple different styles of quilting in this. And we're about to add another one too. All right, people. I have the Keytar quilt here that's pretty much done, but not quite done because, well, first of all, let me show you the quilting. I just have the big stitch embroidery floss here. You can hardly see it, but I went with free motion quilting inside of here, this ditch. And then I did like regular, I don't know, small stitch, I guess, quilting triangles here. I had to do that much because this batting, you can only go up to 4 inches apart. So probably wouldn't have done this part otherwise. I probably would have just left it, but I wanted to do more quilting. And so what I want to talk about next is I kind of felt like the Keytar blocks were a little bit too plain and they needed something more. So the idea is I'm gonna add these buttons. I bought some buttons on eBay and I got some at the fabric store in my area. And then my mom sent me some as well. And I'm just gonna pretty much sew buttons on. Each one will be different slightly. I think it's gonna look so cool. Probably all the more we need. And I'll do, you know what I mean, combinations. Ooh, these ones might be the move for this. I really like these. You know, the Keytar does have buttons there. Watch, I'll show you. So the actual Keytar does have all these buttons here and stuff, and the knob, and some like, you know, volume and power on off switches and stuff. So that's what these buttons are kind of gonna represent. Obviously it's just a rendering, but I think that's gonna be cool. And the quilt is already quilted, so I think it's gonna be okay to actually sew the buttons on and sew them through all the layers. That's gonna be my best bet for making sure they're fully fastened on. And yes, you will be able to see it on the back. I'm okay with it. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, I think some people would probably not want the small stitch to show on the back, but I don't care. It's not that I don't care. I just think it's not going to really matter. And I think it's more important, first of all, we're adding to the quilting. And second of all, if these buttons were to catch on something and they were only sewn through one layer of fabric, they could rip off and then rip a hole. Whereas if they're sewn through all 3 layers, that's going to more strongly fasten them on. The best buttons to use, I think, for this are ones that are really going to lay flat. So like these would probably not be appropriate because, like, look, they're not going to lay flat. See what I mean? They would jingle jangle like that and get caught on stuff. These two, they would get caught on stuff and probably rip off. Whereas these, on the other hand, like, look how flat those are. Those are so flat. Those are perfect. And we can do a middle ground, you know what I mean? Like, these are a little on the thicker side, but I'm still okay with using these because I think this is gonna look good. So I'll probably just be sewing these buttons right along and probably check in later. For me to add the buttons on, I kind of laid it out in my living room and I just kind of experimented, auditioned the buttons everywhere and laid them where I wanted to. And then once I got them where I wanted them, I had like took a picture of it and I kind of marked it with markers where I wanted them. And then I safety pinned them to each block. And then I pretty much just got busy sewing all the buttons on. I definitely at some points kind of felt like, you know, is this a good idea with the buttons? I wasn't sure if it was looking good. And I realized that the thing to do would be to just keep adding more buttons. That seemed to be the way to go. So I just kept adding more and more buttons. So this is the final result. This is my Keytar quilt. I absolutely love it. This is one of my favorite quilts. I ultimately think the buttons turned out stunning, and I had an absolute blast making this quilt. This was one of the funnest quilts I've ever made. Thank you for coming to Dave's Craft Room. I hope you liked this video. Remember to like and subscribe to my channel, and please come again.